Hey guys, welcome to Let's Play Pokemon Part 2. What I've decided to do from this point on is to read and review Pokemon Creepypastas. I figure that's a lot easier up until things start to get weird, so you guys don't have to listen to me just ramble on, which is probably not too fun, I'm aware of that. So if you have any specific Pokemon related creepypastas that you would like me to read and do a review of, please leave them in the comments down below, and I will get to them as I see fit. As of right now, the first one I do want to cover is probably one of the most common, most popular. There is a hack for it, two different versions actually. One that's based off of the story, and then one with a quote-unquote hidden section. The story in particular is Pokemon Lost Silver, so let's get started with that. You see, I am a simple college student living alone in an apartment. I was very enthusiastic about the release of Pokemon Heart Gold Soul Silver here in the States. I have purposefully locked myself out of all media and the internet aside for school purposes. That means no 4chan, no V, no Bubblepedia, etc. As I was busy with the school year and being poor at the time, I wasn't able to buy Soul Silver on its launch date. After my school year ended, I ordered Soul Silver on Amazon, however, it would take a week for it to arrive. I decided that during that time I would replay my Crystal version on my Game Boy Color. However, I realized that long ago, my mom threw it away because I told her the save went dead, and I was very upset about it then. She also threw away my Silver version, so all I have is my Game Boy Color. As such, I set out to GameStop and bought a used Silver version, and it's the only Pokemon game left they have for the Game Boy Color. $10, fairly cheap. I went home and started it up for a nostalgia trip. However, that's where things started getting bizarre, and most likely the reason why you read this. The Game Freak logo started up as normal, but just froze there. I thought the cartridge was just errored or something, so I turned it off and on. The same thing happened. I tried pressing A and start over and over and all the buttons. Eventually, the logo vanished and there was a black screen for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, rather than going to the usual menu screen, I was already in the game in a previous save file. Which was odd, as I was expecting all these cartridges to have been wiped away by the poor battery. Either way, I wasn't complaining, as I would have chosen the continue option to see what the previous guy did anyways. First off, I checked his trainer information. His name was just ... He didn't have much originality. I checked his profile and apparently he had 999 hours and 99 minutes put into the game with all 16 badges, $99,999.99 in Pokedollars, and 251 Pokemon on the Pokedex. Seeing as he apparently had Mew and Celebi logged also, I'm guessing he either used a Game Genie or was a really hardcore Pokemon player back then. I checked his Pokemon to see what a badass team he has. To my surprise, I saw 5 unknowns and a 6th Pokemon named Hurry. I'm thinking that this must be some cruel joke by the person who last played this game, but I decided to check on the profiles of the Pokemon anyways. As expected, they were different letters of the unknown. All level 5. It was a bit shaky with my unknown alphabet at the time, but I identified the word spelled out to be leave. As for the 6th Pokemon, it turned out to be a Cyndaquil. Mind you, this is before they were individualized Pokemon icons. The Cyndaquil looked like normal, but it was level 5 with only 1 HP left, with only 2 attacks. Leer and Flash. I don't know why they named him Hurry, but at the time I just disregarded it. The most eerie thing was that, despite my volume being at max, none of the Pokemon had said their usual cries. Just pure silence. Having enough of the team, I closed it. I was parked on what appears to be a room inside the Bellsprout Tower. However, for some reason there was no NPCs around. Even more eerie was that the pillar in the middle didn't move at all, as if it was just leaning on its side. There was no music at all, and there was no exit or ladder, or at least I thought there wasn't. I walked around for a few minutes, but can't seem to find a way out. There was certainly not a room I've seen in the Bellsprout Tower before. I tried checking on my items for an escape rope, but the bag was completely empty. There wasn't any wild Pokemon either. Finally, I managed to find a ladder, which turned out to be behind the pillar. The screen turned black and the music finally started playing. I had a sudden chill as I recognized that melody I heard to be the theme you hear when you listen to the radio at the ruins of Elf where the unknown are at. I immediately realized that it wasn't a loading transition, but rather I was in a dark room and would need flash. Before I took care of that though, I immediately checked my Pokegear to change the radio to something more pleasant, but it turns out there was no radio card, or even a phone nor time cards. There was only a map card, in which Gold ... from earlier, and I would call him Gold from now on, was just walking in the midst of black. I recall that Cyndaquil has Flash, so I turned off my Pokegear and made Cyndaquil use it. I didn't see any message saying hurry, you'd use flash or anything like that. The room just became lit like that. Lit, just like that. And I soon regretted it. The room was a chilling blood red with a linear gray path heading south. The ladder I used to go up-down was not there at all. I had no choice but to head south. The screen got darker every 20 steps until I finally made it to the end, which appears to be a sign. I read the sign which said, "Turn back now." Suddenly, I was asked to answer a yes, no, but there was no question asked. I chose yes, as I do not know what it was asking, and the screen went black again, making a ladder climbed sound. The unknown radio music stopped, and a few seconds was replaced with a not as creepy pokey flute radio music. I was in another dark room, but I held my breath and used flash again. Suddenly, it said that Hurry has fainted, which was odd since I recalled that there was no status conditions like poison on him, and I clearly wasn't in a battle. I checked my Pokemon quickly, and suddenly he is no longer in my party. In fact, after a bit of investigating, none of my Pokemon are there, but instead replaced with level 10 unknown. I did the same thing as before, and spelled out the unknown. My then team of unknowns spelled, he died. Either way, after that creepy change, the room was lit to reveal myself in a very small room that appears to be only 4 squares big. The walls of that room were gray bricks, as if inside something that was hollowed out. Outside of that room appears to be a bunch of graves similar to the ones in Pokemon Red Blue. I walked around that small room, pressed A button, but nothing happened. I've already concluded that this was clearly a hack game, and some sadistic fuck sold it to GameStop. However, my curiosity kept me going. I checked the trainer profile of ... again, only to find out that the sprite of Gold was missing his arms. He also seems to appear less smug, but rather seems more sad and empty in a way that I do not know how to describe. For some reason, it also said that he has 24 badges, which was clearly impossible. After a few minutes of aimless wandering, my character suddenly spun and did the escape rope spinning animation. Instead of flying up though, my character spun downward slowly, as if sinking. After that screen, the music stopped, and finally landing, the overworld sprite of Gold is colored differently. Instead of the usual red color he dons, he appears completely white, including his skin, as if he came straight from the colorless Game Boy games placed into a colored background of the Game Boy Color. I checked his profile, and now, now he is as white as his overworld sprite, he lost his legs and what appears to be bloody tears from his eyes. It also says he has 32 badges, which now starts to disturb me, as this change in number seems to represent something important. I also checked my Pokemon, which this time contains 5 unknown and a level 100 Celebi without a nickname. The unknown are this time level 15 and spelled out dying. I checked the Celebi's profile. It was a shiny Celebi, except there was only half of the sprite. 1 leg, 1 arm, 1 eye. Its only attack was Perish Song. The area I was in itself was the Sprout Tower with the immobile pillar as before, except everything was apparently red. I walked north for what felt like forever. Eventually, I finally encountered some generic men and women non-NPCs. They were all lined up to the side, just facing the long, slantish pillar in the middle. They were also white, and nothing happens when I try to speak to them. I kept going north until eventually the pillar finally appears chopped off, with a transparent red in that spot. I went up to red, and without pressing A, I was suddenly engaged, finally, in a battle. The music starts again, which sounds like the unknown radio music, but played backwards. Gold's battle sprite matches his front one with the bloody eyes, white skin, and lack of arms, while Red's sprite was the same as before in Gold, Silver, and Crystal, except transparent. The text simply said, "Wants to battle," as if he has no name, and both of us only have 1 Pokemon each, which is weird as I swore I had 6 with the unknowns. My shiny Celebi came out conveniently with half a sprite for the back of sprite also. The shiny noise animation was different, and the sounds it made sound like multiple screech attacks used consecutively. Red sent out seemingly normal male Pikachu, except he is level 255, and his sprite seems sad and has tears in its eyes. Rather than the usual fight item Pokemon run menu, I was only given the option to use the attacks. Since Celebi only has 1, I chose it. Naturally, since Pikachu was level 225, he went first. Pikachu used Curse, lowering his speed and increasing his other stats. I'm not even sure if Pikachu could use Curse. Celebi used Perish Song. In 3 turns, both Pokemon get KO'd, not like I have a choice. At this point, I didn't even go back to the fight menu, as the battle just continued without me. Also note that there was no animations at all for some reason. Pikachu used Flail, which didn't do much damage despite its level, and his health was maxed. Celebi used Perish Song. Nothing happened as as it was already used. Pikachu used Frustration, which did a shit ton of damage, knocking Celebi down to less than 10 HP. Celebi used Pain Split, which surprised me as Celebi didn't even have that attack in the first place. Now Celebi and Pikachu both have about 150 HP. Pikachu used Mean Look. Not that that did anything. As expected, due to the effects of Perish Song, my Celebi fainted. Except in the text it said, Celebi has died. And instead of the ordinary drop off the screen animation, the Celebi back sprite just vanished. For some reason, the Pikachu was still up even with Perish Song, and it didn't count as any loss. Pikachu used one more different attack beyond the 5 attack limit. Pikachu used Destiny Bond. Afterwards, it said Pikachu has died with a slow fade out animation. Apparently, I was the winner as the transparent red sprite showed up and said, absolutely nothing. At that point, I just freaked out and the transparent red sprite suddenly beheaded, leaving nothing but his transparent body. The battle then ended at that point and faded out along with the music. In the back in the overworld, another change in the gold sprite, and he is now transparent as Red's overworld sprite. I quickly checked Gold's profile, where this time the only thing remains from him is his head, with a transparent skin. His head was zoomed in a bit, showing black void in his eyes. It now stated that he now has 40 badges, and I then backed out and checked more Pokemon. They were all level 20 shiny unknown, which, when spelled out, read, no more. I was at what I know is next to the end. There was apparently no music playing, but for some reason I still felt like something was there that could be heard. I was back in my room in New Bark Town. Maybe finally I get to play this game properly, but who am I kidding? I knew that sadistic fuck must have done something. I walked around my room, interacting with things, as I'm a bit afraid to go down the stairs to see what was awaiting down there. Note, I said walked, as while the background was moving. Gold was not moving, his transparent limbed, it all was doing so, floating like the ghosts you see in Diamond and Pearl. As expected, the radio, computer, and TV did not work, so I had no choice but to go down the stairs. I ended up in the same lower level of my house. Everything appeared normal except Mom isn't there. After failing to interact with anything in this room, I decided to go outside. To my surprise, the door leading outside at the south didn't work, and instead I just walked straight through it into a void. I continued moving south to see what the fuck was going on. My house vanishes, and I head into the void. It was creepy as when I entered the void, the outline of Gold's transparent sprite turned white to contrast with the pitch black. Eventually, I reached a white area and Gold's sprite turned black and transparent again. I continued south without thinking of stopping at all. After a long trek south, I finally encountered something. It was Gold's regular sprite. I talked to it. He said, goodbye, forever. Notably with a space between forever and ... and vanished. As that happened, it said, ... used nightmare. Which at that point, I would not deny that being possible. Gold did another escape rope animation, spinning slowly downwards like before. I'm now back in that small hollowed out room, surrounded by graves like earlier. Or at least I say I was back there. There was no sprite anymore. I tried to walk around, but nothing moved. Not even wall bumping noise. I checked my trainer profile with absolutely no Gold sprite left. It said I have 0 badges, and all the pictures of the Johto gym leaders at the bottom were replaced with skulls. I checked my Pokemon, which were all level 25 unknown. As expected, it spelled out a phrase that I dared to read. I'm dead. As soon as I went back to the overworld, the room I was supposedly was covered with the same blocks as the walls. I then figured out what exactly that room was when the final text said RIP ... The room was a big grave surrounded by other graves. Gold has already been dead. He died presumably a few years ago after he defeated Red. He was a young trainer who, despite his efforts in collecting so many badges and attempts at becoming Pokemon Master, was still unable to avoid the inevitable fate of death, and his efforts were eventually forgotten by the next generation. I was unable to escape from that text no matter what I pressed. I tried resetting the game, and the same thing happened, at which then I finally decided to give up on that horrible nightmare. After that experience, I will never look at that gimmick unknown the same way again. They say that only the first generation of folktales and legends, but the second generation have shown me how unpleasant truth can be. I eventually enjoyed Soul Silver immensely, but I still can't unthink what that rigged game has told me. Alrighty, so that concludes Pokemon Lost Silver. This was the first creepypasta I ever read. I actually came across it accidentally when I was YouTubing a video for the Rugrats theory. And when I first read it, it freaked me out. And then when I discovered that there was a game for it, 2 different versions of the game, I loved them. I'm so used to playing the games now that I totally forgot what the story was even about, and I did notice some differences between the actual story and the game. Like, the part where he said, a big grave surrounded by other graves. The last few paragraphs about how Gold's already been dead, etc. was not in a game at all. All it said was you entered that hollow room with the bricks and stuff, and it just said R.I.P. that, and then the 3 little ellipsis, and that was that. That was the end of the game. That was different. The battle between Red and your trainer was pretty there, except for the fact that in this game, this version, you could have 5 moves, and obviously you can't in the games. But yeah, other than that, it was pretty spot on as far as like the comparison part goes. The only thing is too that with the games, they made another version recently with a second part where you encounter the rival in Pokemon Gold and Silver. You encounter the you don't battle him, but you do get transported, after you talk to him, you do get transported to Goldenrod City, and you have to go through this slew of people, and they spell out something. They spell out the words. If you go through, you encounter them, it'll like if you press A, an unknown letter pops up, and you can either unscramble them, or after you encounter them all, they unscramble themselves anyway if you go up a pathway to the gate that'll take you to, like, the next town. And they spell out the words, "Who are you, kid?" I actually like that version. I wish it was in the story, because it, I don't know, it's made the game seem a lot longer, and the playthrough longer, as opposed to just going down that hallway, encountering the sign, and that being that. Other than that, as for the story itself, like I said, it's still by far my favorites, even though it's way overdone. And I definitely give it an 8 out of 10. Originality, the fact that it's become so popular that it can be a played game, which, I mean, who wouldn't want to play half these games that people write about on here? And the only thing, like, I was really iffy on is I had a little bit of trouble reading it just because of the way the author writes. So that's where he kind of lost points. Other than that, I really love this story. And if I can find it, I will include a link for the game, both versions. Probably the hidden version, because the hidden version is also included with the original, so you can kind of play both in one. If I can find a link for that, I will definitely put it in the description box below for you guys to download it and try it yourself. The nice thing about that is that you don't need an emulator for it. So if you don't have one on your computer or whatever, you don't need it. It's just the game. Like, it's just the game itself. So, yeah, that was that. That was part 2 of Let's Play Pokemon Leaf Green, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.